Welcome back. We're joined by Heather Mason, who's the founder of Canadian Women's Sex-Based Rights. She's a former federal prisoner and speaking about her even firsthand experience and her concerns with trans women, so that's biological men identifying as women who are now, seems to be in an increase, transferring to women's only prisons. Thank you so much for joining me, Heather. We were talking about the child mother program, which again, I'm not familiar with what happens in the prison system. That seems like definitely a good program, especially if we're trying to rehabilitate, right? And that's the kind of the point of prison, to rehabilitate people to integrate back into society. So that's usually beautiful to have a child be perhaps the vehicle for that. Are there any other concerns you have with men transferring into women's prisons? I mean, we know about the sexual violence. There's also physical violence that happens in prison, isn't it?
Yes. So other concerns are tightening of security. Like I mentioned, 86% are in for violent offenses. So I'm afraid that they're going to start deploying men's sites to women's sites. So like the guards that handle the men, having them come in and handle the women, because you have special training to be able to work in a women's prison, where it's more trauma informed. So I'm concerned about the tightening of security, losing programs, and also the women who are not being able to get parole or being bullied or harassed. Like the women have tried to speak out about incidents that have happened. And for an example, Matthew Harks, who's a convicted serial pedophile who has like 60 victims and 200 offenses, he was in Grand Valley and he sexually assaulted an Indigenous woman in the bathroom there. And the women found out and they went to lock him out of their house. And he went and got the guards. And the guards came back and told the women that if they did not let him back in the house, that they would put bullying in their paperwork, which would prevent them from getting parole, which would prevent them to be able to be rehabilitated, get out, get back to their families, see their kids. So I'm concerned about the impacts on women with their security levels, but also with their parole.
Oh wow, this is just shocking information. Maybe you could share with us some other anecdotes. Jodie Matthew Burke. This seems shocking. Are you familiar with that story?
I am, yes.
Please share with our viewers, because
So
I read this and my jaw dropped.
mine didn't, it was expected. Luckily, he is not in a woman's prison right now. Last I heard, they transferred him to BC. So he was not a woman, was looking at some serious time, and then ended up identifying as a woman and going by the name Amber. And then actually just before his sentencing, he ended up mutilating his own genitals in hopes that they A, wouldn't sentence him, or B, would 100% transfer him to a woman's prison. That is somebody who needs to stay far away from women.
And this is a person who had a very serious rap sheet of sexual assault and harm against women.
Yeah, and he was a trained MMA fighter as well. Very violent.
I mean, spousal abuse. There was a lot going on here. I was shocked to see that someone of the gravity of the crime would be even allowed near women, considering there was a lot of gender-based targeting of violence against women in this case. My goodness. Do you have any other anecdotes you could share? Because sometimes this helps our viewers understand what is actually happening.
Yes, so another one is Stephen Melbacher. He did 2 decades in the men's prisons. He committed like 16 bank heists. While he was out on parole, he ended up getting revoked. And during that time, he ended up identifying as a woman. He was at least 3 women's prisons. They kept transferring him to different women's prisons because once a man identifies as a woman and is transferred to a woman's prison, he can't be involuntarily transferred back to the men's prison. The only way he's going back to the men's prison is if he requests that transfer. So they involuntarily transfer them between the women's prisons. So then there's victims and chaos left at every single prison that he was at because he repeated the same behavior over and over again. He was basically untouchable because he would just threaten with human rights cases, saying they're discriminating against his gender identity. And he had 2 claims with the tribunal. I'm not sure what has happened with those, because what happens is they go through mediation and they sign a non-disclosure, which means that you can't find out what has happened. And then also policy and things don't get changed because it's settled outside of the tribunal. So Steve actually sexually assaulted quite a few women. One of them was an immigrant woman who suffered horrendous abuse at the hands of her stepfather and
Okay, I'm
foster
sorry
brothers
to
as
cut
she
you off. We want to pick this up just in just a moment. We're going to commercial.